So, this idea that performance anxiety and this nervousness is something to be conquered is inherently where we want to hit the pause button. How are we growing? What are our measurements of growth? And I think one of the healthiest forms of thriving and success is when you are rooted in those progress goals.
Welcome back to season 5 of Beyond the Steps, presented by Apolla Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. Today, we are talking the mental game of dance, conquering performance anxiety and building unbreakable confidence with our repeat guest and one of our absolute faves. Bree, tell everyone who we have with us today.
We've got the fabulous Lauren Ritchie back. She is an established mental skills educator, facilitator, and keynote speaker. Her areas of interest and expertise include sport and performance mental training, as well as the intersection of well being and mindfulness. Her work has reached youth athletes in all spaces, including dance, hockey, music, gymnastics, and other industries. Lauren has created the teacher and coach training programs to support mental skills and optimize leadership and learning. Lauren, welcome back. It's so great to see you again.
Well, thank you. I always love our conversations, and I cannot wait to dive in because there's so much to discuss.
You have worked with so many dancers, among other athletes, as I just said. What are some of the most common mental blocks or limiting beliefs you've encountered that hinder performance?
Because it is such a big one, and we're recognizing that it's going to be at times different for different dancers and at different ages and stages. So, the ones that I hear often from dance educators revolve a lot around motivation and this idea of full out and grit and what it takes to actually achieve this end goal that we're desiring. From dancers, I often hear about just the nerves and the nervousness and the compare and despair that is so prevalent and even more prevalent with the technology that we have and the what grabs our attention these days or what distracts us. And then from parents, I think there's just this really, really strong desire of how do I support my dancer through what is inherently a very emotional and internal experience. So it varies, it wavers. I think even dance teachers and coaches have their own internal system of what feels like blocks. But the reality is that we are moving through and at times what is a very stressful and vulnerable environment. And so the brain kicks in and it kicks in doing many times exactly what it's built for. It's just sometimes that what it's built for is inconvenient or uncomfortable in our body, especially in high stress moments and in competitive environments.
Do you think that it is realistic to expect? Because I think sometimes when we talk about mental health, you think, okay, well, I'm going to find tools so I never have limiting beliefs and I get rid of it completely. Or is it more natural to say, of course, I'm going to have limiting beliefs, but the more important lesson is being equipped with the tools to not live there, to be able to deal with it and overcome it and get yourself to a healthier space. What is it? What's the goal?
Yeah. Well, I found it fascinating and I was like, "Ooh, I can't wait to start here with the title of this episode, this idea of that we're gonna conquer performance anxiety." And I was just, uh-oh. Because so often the message that we do receive, whether it's in pop culture, whether it's in really like catchy, quippy one-liners, is this idea that anxiety is something to be conquered, to be battled, to win, to like slay the dragon and be done with it. And that is just simply not the truth when it comes to how we are growing as athletes and as artists, and also just what it means to be human, putting ourselves in the way of stress, which is actually not always a bad thing. Um, I would argue that stress actually has many beneficial things, but when we feel it in our body, we start to frame it in a certain way, or we tell ourselves a story about it, or we just don't wanna feel it. So this idea that performance anxiety and this nervousness is something to be conquered is inherently where we wanna hit the pause button and look at how are we framing the emotional experience of stress and nerves what are the thoughts and the framing and the mental chatter and the mental talk that we're attaching to it? And what are some of these belief systems about ourselves and also this idea of stress? So I don't think it's something that we are inherently going to kick and conquer. And I think holding to that belief almost lengthens the suffering. So can we learn that multiple things are happening in our body and in our brain when we're showing up to something that we care deeply about, to something that we have invested blood, sweat, tears, like so much time, so much energy into? Can we acknowledge that our very human brain is built for survival, not not happiness, and that there's going to be inherent coping, mechanisms and ways that we approach it, that we do have some autonomy, and the more skills that we can learn and put into our tool belt. Again, each dancer will be different. Each dancer on different days will need different things. I heard the example recently of sometimes you need tweezers, sometimes you need a hammer, like different experiences and days demand different things. But our job as educators and as adults, number 1 is to be informing ourselves and practicing and honoring that we are also human. And if they're what we are seeing showing up in the dancers, and we're the leader of the space, if it is what is coming into our room and into our choreography and into our performances, it's also giving the dancers the tools and actually teaching them, 1, how to use them, but also prioritizing them so that you are training them in the training spaces. You're not trying to learn them when you're in the stress and in the nerves. So there's a sort of like a systematic practice of how we navigate nerves, and also a very internal world. And there are many skills that we can use and learn and prioritize and practice. But what I do say to all the dancers is that it is no different than physical training. You are doing at this point millions of plies. Why? Safety, strength, transfer of weight, self-trust in the process of movement. You are doing millions of repetitions so that you have the skills, you have the technique, you have that support when you need it. And you can shift from that training mindset into the performance mindset, the present mindset, and trust yourself. But if you were just to do a plie or just to do a push-up when you felt like it would take much longer, if if at all, to gain that momentum and strength. So, if you're only doing these mental skills and these mental practices and sort of these emotional resilience type training, if you're only doing it when you're in distress or when you feel like it, you're already missing the opportunity and some of the consistency that is demanded of building that self-connection.
What is the difference between healthy nerves, so, those little butterflies, like, right before I get nervous, some people get, like, really edgy, and some people have to go to the bathroom. I wanna go to sleep. Um, but, yeah, I'm a sleeper. I'm like, "Okay, can I go take a nap over here, please?" What's the difference between healthy nerves and debilitating performance anxiety, and how can dancers distinguish between the 2?
I mean, that is a great framing, and I love that you shared your perspective and experience because that was my husband's in a football locker room, and that is not the space where we wanna see yawning, we wanna see nap time, and yet that also is a stress response, and let us honor that every body is going to be doing different things in those spaces. The way that I would frame it is that nerves are very normal. They are part of the brain's mechanism to help us with focus, to help us with extra dumps of energy so we can perform, so we can execute. To think that we're not gonna be nervous or that in a competitive dance space that the opposite of nerves is like complete, cool, calm, collected. I'm like, "No, no. If you're about to go out and do my jazz group, I do not want you calm. I want you present, focused, grounded, clear, but I want that energy that your body is giving you." And when we look at the debilitating, when it swings so far, I really speak to it more from my personal experience. Understanding each dancer might be different, but I knew that my anxiety, that volume had turned up way too loud when it was infiltrating every part of my day, every part of my life, every like whether it's cooking breakfast, whether it is brushing your teeth, whether it is getting into your costume, like it was so loud and so incessant that I couldn't process or focus or even sort of like come present. That's probably it. It's like it just hijacked the whole system and took over. And so, again, from somebody who's navigated different scales of anxiety or anxious times, because similar to you, even in moments like this, I tell dancers and anyone who's ever seen me perform, you will almost always only see me perform and present in black. Why? Because my body does exactly what it's built to do. I'm a little sweaty. I'm feeling the jitters, and I've learned through sweat stains on green shirts, I'm like, "Black it is." And not because when I feel the nervousness and when I feel those butterflies, and I tell this to the dancers as well, it is not a sign that you are not prepared. It is not telling you that something is gonna go wrong. Those nerves and all of those jitters are not impending doom. What they are is your body giving your energy, your body telling you that something big is about to happen, and again, even the term big, we might soften that and just say something you care about is about to happen, and I expect them. And the idea here is, can you befriend and honor and respect that some of this experience that your body is kicking up is exactly what it's built to do? But the debilitation really is, has it taken over the system? Has it hijacked every aspect? Because then we do want extra support, and we do want adults in the space that know how to help us when we're in those moments, because teens, kids, they're not supposed to know these skills. The adults are supposed to teach the skills. And if we ourselves don't feel empowered, well, there's the first step is like, let's get really curious and clear. What are the many ways that emotions are energy and motion in the body? And what are the many ways that a person can frame, take those body sensations and frame them and connect self-talk and connect meaning? Because so often that's what's happening in our studio spaces.
Yeah, that's interesting. So many dancers strive for this idea of perfection, and we know that that's kind of an unattainable goal, right? But how does this pursuit impact the mental health and performance of especially younger athletes? And what are healthier alternatives to that mindset?
I have the most devastating response to perfectionism, and I only say it's devastating because it was one that I grappled with, and I was like, "This can't be it." But perfectionism's antidote, or the way in which we disconnect from that perfectionistic mindset, and perfectionistic mindset really is rooted in fear. And the way that we counter that is through self-compassion. And so much of self-compassion from a branding perspective, from other people's opinions, was this idea that it's soft and that it's weak and that it doesn't understand high performance, and it's just gonna be this sort of approach that lets you off the hook and not work as hard. And so when people were even soft or kind or, like, offered that approach to me, I was just, "You do not understand high performance and what I'm trying to get at." And so through the devastating process of, and the rumble that is, "Oh, wait." Self-compassion to counter some of this perfectionistic type narrative that we have isn't about letting yourself off the hook or just, like, not doing the thing. It is about having the ability to speak to yourself in a way that still holds your vision, still holds the values, but is on your own team. And it is supportive, and so it's not, and it's also not that sort of hyper positive, at least in my experience. So, often you'll see maybe even, like, on Instagram or the internet, it's like, "Oh, positive self-talk," you know? Really, really do that. Oh, great, great. I want that for all of us. But to me, as a performer and as somebody who is working for a really high level, if my negative self-talk was I'm failing, and I was like, flip it, I'm winning. It's like, well, that's not true. Like, and you can't lie to yourself. That that's not a thing. But if I had the voice and I trained the voice and I have trained the voice to I'm failing to and I can keep trying or and I will keep going or and I'm willing to try another way. That to me is still committed to the growth and still committed to how I want to show up, but it isn't just sort of this automatic flip. Because for me, that didn't work. It didn't work just to, like, look in the mirror and just be like, "Yeah, strong and beautiful." Like, those affirmations felt, if anything, more separating in that perfectionist type thinking because it didn't feel true. And so much about perfectionism and working through that is the ability to sit with yourself and start to give yourself some credit for all the ways in which you've grown, all the ways in which you have a value system that you love and appreciate, and cultivating a voice that you may have never heard. And I think that that was one of my contributors was the fact that I liked the hard ass voice. I liked the super critical voice. I was like, "Tear me down, and I will it will confirm that I need to grit in." And so what I'm learning is, yes, you can take that approach and maybe at times, in very specific moments, maybe that does work. But when we're looking about sustainability, when we're looking at stamina, and where I'm talking physically, but also just for the love of dance, it is worthy, and I would say it is mandatory to explore the many different voices that are created in our own selves, and the many ways that we can talk to ourselves in contrast to that fear and that inner critic and sort of that really hard-nosed edge. So, yes, perfectionism is high and strong and mighty in our community, and we can have a whole conversation. I remember talking to a fellow, peer and mentor, and I was like, "Do you think that dancers are like, do you think we are perfectionists and then we're drawn to dance because there's that element, or do we come in these free loving dance humans and then it turns us into perfectionists?" And it's just like, it's a conversation that you can chicken and egg and you can go around. And at the end of the day, what matters most is that each dancer feels like they are very grounded in their love of dance, in a mental framework that allows for both striving and thriving, and that with a sense of well-being, with a sense that they're on their own team, with a sense that they do have worth and value no matter where they're at in the process.
That's a lot. That's some great perspective right there. I've never really heard it from that angle, and that helps so much because it doesn't always feel authentic when you do the flip. Like, that's my struggle with it is, like, I feel like I'm lying to myself, and, like, really that's not the goal, right? So I really appreciate your perspective on that.
Can you walk us through some practical mental skills and training techniques? Some just your favorite about managing performance anxiety before, during, and after a performance.
Okay. So and I will say, and I'm gonna loop it in and to the where we left off. And it's this idea that one of the skills that you can do, if you feel like it is completely lying to yourself to say certain things in the training process as you build towards what's going to be a nervous experience, sit with yourself and find the parts that are true that you actually I was gonna say love about yourself, but even that's hard sometimes. And so really even just sitting with this idea of like, what's true about you? And so we've done exercises where I'll have dancers like write down like all the hard things that they did today, all the hard things that they've done this week, all the hard things that they've done over the past month. And when you actually look at how many things you have navigated or all the ways that you showed up for yourself or your teammates when you even didn't want to, you can start to pull out and be like, I know that I will give effort. I know that I will show up for my team. I trust myself that even though I don't wanna do the thing and it feels hard, that I can navigate it. So, I want to honor there is some great research of like, sure, look in the mirror and just like start talking to yourself in a new way, even if it doesn't feel real. I just, again, for me, found it personal that I needed to sit with myself and connect into the parts that do feel true and the parts that I know I could grow. And that was always really beautiful and exciting. When we're looking at heading into a competition or a high stress environment, like I had said earlier, it's important to think about what are the tools that you almost know that you'll need in that. Because I feel like most people know what happens in those high stress moments and they get a little more irritated. They're anticipatory, which is what the brain is built for. It's an anticipatory organ. And so what do we need? Well, one is this idea of whether it is a 7-Eleven breath, whether it is a body scan, it is something that is bringing you into the present moment. And it is recognizing that when you've been flooded and when your brain has been hijacked, breath is one of the things that can bring you back in very quickly. Again, if you're in the panic moment and you're like, "What's this 7-Eleven breath?" I mean, it will work, but like, let's actually just normalize it and make it a part of our warm up, a part of our routine. I was somebody that very much had playlists going in because music affects our mood so much. Now, in high school, I look back and giggle a bit because part of my like game time headspace, I mean, I was a full punk kid. Like I was listening to the most aggressive, but hey, if it works for me and like Janet Jackson, Black Cat jazz solo, like it called for some of that energy. I was like, oh, good for you. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but you can do it. Same goes for anything when it comes to different styles or disciplines. You can actually make some of these playlists. But I think when I zoom out and when I was journaling this morning about like what are the really important things here, I think it is important to get really clear on your vision, on what is it that you are aspiring to do? How are you aspiring to feel? What is the ultimate for you in this performance you're working towards? Because most dancers frame very quickly what they do not want, what they are afraid of, the fear of other people's opinions, knowing they're going to be judged, pieces in their dance that maybe don't feel as solid as they would have hoped, skills, drills, tricks, etc. And what you're doing is you're hyper focusing, and what you focus on amplifies of the things you don't want and the fear. So let's actually take a moment and think about what do you want? And not just how do you want to execute this? Because so many dancers right now are focusing on what something looks like as opposed to what something feels like. And when we get onto the stage, there is no mirror. When we get onto the stage, we wanna be fully present in our artistry. We wanna unapologetically just vomit out our love of dance, our love of movement, our love of the piece. And that is going to ask us before we even get onto that stage of like, what are we working towards? And if we can really get clear on the stories we're telling, the way we're expressing, the artistry that we want to grow that can't always be measured, it can't always be adjudicated, but it is the magic of the piece. Let's get super clear on that. Let's also get really clear on what our goals, that what are our definitions of growth, what are our definitions of success that are completely in our control, because competitive environments innately remind you, "Oh, hey, guess what? You're gonna be judged by somebody else and their subjective opinion, and it's gonna be impacted by all these things we don't control. Who's in the category? What time are you dancing?" Go on and on and on. There's a bottomless pit of worries that are not in our control. And what we know is that when you focus on what is not in your control, you increase stress, you increase nerve, you increase anxiety. So, like, heyo, before we even get to the environment, let's get very clear. So, from there, you are training in a way that is clear on what you do want. You're training in a way that of things that are in your control. You're training in a way that I would say is very grounded and expansive, as opposed to that perfectionistic, need to please, need to prove, which is gonna feel very constrictive, very tight. And again, it's that sort of perfectionist, like, I'm gonna control all the controllables by, like, squeezing all the toothpaste out of the tube and just, like, destroy the whole thing. It's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." We actually have great research to show that when you tighten and constrict that much, I mean, even do that with your hand. It's like you're trying to tighten and constrict. Okay, now do a Russian and do a jeté and perform like your most vulnerable self. Innately, it's not gonna work. So, if we can do those things, and I'm saying literally in your body, what does it feel like to be expansive, to be grounded? Can you take all of those butterflies and put them into formation and tell them what to focus on and where you want that energy going? That is going to offer the experience and the performance and the routine that you most desire, as opposed to that fear-based, worrisome type focus and energy and actions.
Lauren, the dance world is highly competitive. How can dancers cultivate healthy competitive spirit without letting it undermine their value system, lead to burnout, kind of impede on their self-worth? What are some practical ways to reframe those thoughts and go about it in a positive, healthy way?
Yeah, this is one where I felt like sharing some of my personal approaches might be helpful. Recognizing that every dancer, every parent, every choreographer and teacher has a different competitive mindset, a competitiveness scale within them. And I would put myself on that higher edge of that competitive spirit, if you will. And not everyone's going to share that or meet that. And then there's some people that are so far beyond me that I'm like, whoa, what's that like? So we're just recognizing there's going to be a wide level of variation in what it means to be competitive or what competitiveness means to you. But I think it's important to recognize, number 1, dance is an art form, and you are choosing to compete in it as a sport. And to hold that as the truth demands that we also accept certain elements of what we're participating in. I think the fact that we are an art form competing as a sport is actually a giant permission slip to turn your toes to your artistry, to really invest in this story and this emotion and this expression and this experience, as opposed to what is going to get me 0.056 higher in that domain. When you actually break down the way that our competitive businesses run, we have to acknowledge and accept that there is a wild, wild west at times. And that means there's no true rubric. It means that you can't compare one competition to another competition, your results, your marks, etc. You're acknowledging that subjectivity and even bias, like, as an adjudicator, I know that I'm coming in with a bias, and I gotta check myself as an adjudicator, and some will be better than others at doing that, but you're recognizing that you're coming up here in a competitive environment, and subjectivity will be a part of it. And can you acknowledge and be okay with that? That there's not necessarily a clear divide of fair, unfair. We are not swimmers measuring zero point 0.0 seconds. We are not high jumpers with our rulers out. This is going to be an environment that if you hold on to the level of fair or what you think should happen or what you think should be the highest value or which art is better, which discipline is we've already lost. Your competitiveness is going to be in full suffering. So with I kind of wandered away a little bit from the original question, but it is acknowledging that everybody's going to have a different level of competitiveness. It's acknowledging that inherently we're not in a competitive sport. We're choosing that, and also with that, then you have to accept that there's gonna be a wide level of variation. And in those moments, it requires us to double down on how are we growing? What are our measurements of growth? And I think one of the healthiest forms of thriving and success is when you are rooted in those progress goals. It's you comparing yourself to you. And that is, was that section tighter, cleaner? Did you feel more confident than before? were you able to more vulnerably or more courageously share emotion and expression than you did 2 months ago? And it's an answer that I know can feel odd because when we show up to competitive spaces, we are there to compete. We want grades, we want awards, we want first, second, thirds, we want overalls, we want to be in the dance off and you've signed up because you want to compete and I love that. I love the way competitive environments push you to literally strive towards a date. There's so many times in dance offs where I see a level of brilliance in a group, and I'm sitting there as the choreographer being like, "Where was that in January or February?"
Where has that been for the last 6 months? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and also, wow, we just shown a new level has been unlocked for us, and isn't that so cool? I understand when we show up to compete, we're showing up to participate, to throw our hat in the ring, and I love that from a goals perspective, from a growth perspective, from being in an environment where you are forced to navigate the nerves. It is a part of what you're experiencing. So let that be part of your competitive wins as much as a final outcome or an end result or whatnot. And I think there's also something to be said about learning how to navigate when it goes your way, be that gracious winner. And then of course, in life, more often than not, it doesn't. And so if you're gonna have a competitive mindset, it requires you to consider how do you want to respond no matter the competitive results? And can you be practicing personal skills of how you want to show up in the world? Can you be practicing those life skills of feeling through disappointment and understanding sometimes it doesn't go your way or that's unfair and that's the end of the sentence? Like, uh-oh. And so this idea of like, "Oh, I have a really competitive mindset," is fantastic, and it also demands that you cultivate more emotional literacy. It demands a competitive mindset demands that you are practicing self-awareness and that you are purposely setting intentions and aligning your thoughts, behaviors, and actions to participate in this competitive environment. So much of a competitive environment is going to be based on external validation. And it's this idea that you're going to get a mark, a score, a grade, an award, and that's part of the experience. And we've had some really big wins that feel so good and they've let you fly so high. But if your only definition of growth and success is based only on other people's opinions, external validation, that is where the burnout and that is where this relentlessness starts to show up because you've given away all your power, all your self-worth to the wild and wonderful world.
So, what's one piece of advice, Lauren, that you would give a young dancer that's struggling with performance anxiety or self doubt?
I would walk them through learning to befriend their anxiety, which is why I love Inside Out and Inside Out 2 so much. Because all of us have that little orange character, and, like, mine is a different color and has a different name. I've done a lot of these, like, internal family systems and all the parts of us and whatnot, but notice that the intention of anxiety and performance anxiety always has the best of intentions. It's trying to help you survive. It's trying to anticipate what might be happening. It wants you to be prepared. It fundamentally thinks that it's doing some good work. And we also know that yelling at it, shaming ourselves, thinking it shouldn't be here, thinking that we're just gonna, get rid of it and kick it out of the little remote control room, that is inaccurate. And so that's also not gonna be helpful. If we can acknowledge that that little character that exists in all of us is going to be with us on competition day, and it's gonna be part of our competitive process, and it's there because it cares, it's there because it really does want us to be prepared. Okay, great. So, thank you so much. You can sit not you know what, not I mean, beside me, maybe while we get to know each other, but then I'm just, like, gonna put you back here a little bit, and trust that you belong here. Like, I'm not gonna kick you out, I'm not gonna conquer you. Thank you for giving me energy. Thank you for telling me to pay attention and to focus. And like, we're going to do this. We're going to do it together. But me in the driver's seat is going to be my joy, my artistry, my vulnerability, my storytelling, whatever it is. On different days, it might be different characters. But I think that that can be one of the most helpful conversations because it's going to be there and it can be for you. It's not against you. When we reframe those uncomfortable physical experiences, because that's also what it is. It's not just like what you're thinking about. Anxiety in the body is highly inconvenient and uncomfortable. So if we can have those many tools, we can befriend it, we can have our breathing, we can know what helps us regulate, whether it's how we warm up, what we listen to, the way we move our body, if we like to journal before a little bit, if you actually like to have a kitchen party before. Like there's many different ways, but do what you need to for you to feel present in your body. And the more that you do that, I think the more that you understand that you can be on your own team and you can give yourself credit for the ways in which you've prepared and the ways that you're going to show up and share. And so much about confidence is self-trust and trusting that you have your own back, trusting you'll be able to figure it out, trusting that no matter what happens, we'll be okay. We're going to learn, trusting that you can navigate almost any emotion. And
What I'm hearing really from you through this entire conversation, which has been the most striking, is to stop demonizing anxiety, right? And embracing it as part of the process. And it's not all bad. But I think more importantly, as the adults who are leading, like you said, the spaces, figuring out how do we teach that to these younger kids at a younger age so that they are equipped and that they don't have to go through this crippling, process every time they go, start a new dance season or set foot on a stage. I mean, that this is it's kind of almost mind-blowing in a way that I've never really heard it put like this before, but it's so true. Like it automatically you hear anxiety and it gets this negative connotation when really it's there to help you, right? And fuel you in a certain specific way. And we can just embrace that as part of the process. And maybe it shifts the way we look at it.
what is common about mental skills training is that it isn't supposed to be, this sort of like supplement for counseling and psychology and and pharmaceuticals. Mental skills training is really about offering the tools that can and will be supportive, and they won't do harm, but they might not be enough for some people. So when I was in my code red, and I got so upset. I was not doing well. I was in the thick of an eating disorder, depression, anxiety, and it was a cognitive behavioral therapist who was like, "Have you tried brushing your teeth after you eat?" And I was like, "What?" And, like, I fell into such despair because I was like, "Oh, you're not understanding. You just gave me a toothbrush to clean the Titanic." Like, "Oh, no." And then I felt even more lonely in it. And so we're acknowledging, "Oh, no, the intention of that was good. I understand now what she was trying to say, but I needed more support than that. I needed more help." And so when we talk about gratitude lists, when we talk about breathing exercises, when we talk about using and connecting, one of the biggest things that is, like, limiting not only personal and artistic and athletic growth, but community growth is that most people right now are lonely and disconnected, which also increases anxiety. And so when we say connect in with your people, get rid of the phones. Those are distraction devices. They're disconnection. It's like, "Oh, but it numbs the feeling." Yeah, it's numbing and avoidance breeds more anxiety. So like these skills that we're offering about vision building and goal setting, it's an attempt to really anchor in deeper connection with self and deeper connection with your community and your fellow human beings and your fellow teammates. And we're honoring that that's not going to be a bad thing almost ever. I'll say almost, I'll give the asterisks. But also if you're in a space where performance anxiety almost feels like you can't even dance, like it's not even fun anymore, you're not sure if you even love it, all you do is fret and fear the moment that you get on stage. We need more support. We need more help, and that's okay.
Absolutely. That is so wonderful, so profound. So many nuggets in there. So many, so many. So, Lauren, you've been with us many, many times. You know that we do homework. We give homework to our viewers. What is one action that you want our listeners to take between now and next week to make progress in this area?
I would love for them to make a little anxiety character. And if it's the orange one and you wanna steal it from Inside Out too, great. Like I said earlier, I have my own, I named it, but to really in a calm state, not when the anxiety is at the control and the tornado is happening. When you're feeling pretty solid and pretty stable, gently opening up a conversation with that inner anxiety. And whether it's writing to it and then letting it write back, whether it is just asking it a question and then just listening for some whispers. Again, it might feel a little weird or wonky, but I promise you it always has something to say. But if you can offer it kindness, if you can gently say, "You're welcome here. I'm not gonna push you out. Just is there anything you want me to know? Or what is it that you want me to know?" And okay, I hear you. I hear you, and I love that for us. And also, you're not gonna drive my car. Like, I am gonna be in the driver's seat, but you are definitely welcome here. You'll notice a softening. And the more that you can befriend it and make a little character and sing songs together and even just be silly and be like, "Oh, you showed up. Okay, cool. I knew you would. Let's go." I think it'll transform even the intensity and the way in which you view what is showing up, what you're feeling, and maybe even some of the thoughts around that interpretation.
Absolutely. So, you have your homework from Lauren. Lauren, how can people get in touch with you? I know you're doing in-person stuff now. You are doing virtual stuff, which you always have been, but how can people get in touch with you to work with you?
Withlauren.ca is my website, and that is the easiest one just to poke around and see the many different things that we can talk about and do, conventions and conferences and all of the little, sessions together. My Instagram is up on your screen. It's at Lauren_M_Ritchie, and that's the main social media platform that I use. That's the one that I share the most, I connect with the most. When we wear many different hats, as both of you know, I chose very early on in my career. I'm like, we pick one platform. Like that is just for right now. That's the one that I show up and I feel like I can speak to my community and my friends and just sort of like savor what we've created in that little corner of the internet. So those would be the 2 best ways.
Awesome. And we also have homework here at Beyond the Steps. We give it to you every single week, the same homework. So please, 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 please do it. It's to take the steps initiative. It's a free 5-part module that addresses everything from medicine and science, nutrition, psychology, gender equity, racism, sex abuse and prevention, you name it, it's in there and it's totally free. So you can use that link that you see there on the screen to visit that site and take advantage of those free resources.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for being here and for the conversation. Like Melissa said, there's so many nuggets in here that are so valuable. And I hope it helps not only the younger athletes that we're all working with, but also adults that are guiding them and leading them as well. So thank you as always for everything.
Well, thank you for having me. I love our conversations. I look forward to them every season. And thank you for always doing what you do, which is connecting, sharing education, inspiration, and through your own curiosity, you are transforming the dance community and you are connecting all of us, even when you can't see it or even when you don't know who's listening. I promise that we are, and we are better because you do the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I'm back at you today. If you missed the conversation, go back and watch it from the beginning at Apolla Performance and TP Dance Creations. We talked with Lauren about the mental game of dance, conquering performance anxiety, and building unbreakable confidence. Next week, our favorite dance moms join us for another great conversation as we welcome back Amira Azimi and Casey Day of the Two Dance Moms podcast. Until next time, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps, and everybody have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.